What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the channel. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell as I do bring out one video a week. Now today, what we're doing is reviewing the Triumph Street Triple S 660 Lambs, the MY 2017 to 2019 model. So this one here. So this particular model is the restricted version of the 765 power plant. It's directed at the Lambs and A2 licensing, so it's restricted to the 660cc capacity and a power output of 47 horsepower. Now this particular one comes with the 60 Newton meters of torque with a de-restriction option, which Triumph claims it will boost it up to 95 horsepower. So it's no slouch once it's de-restricted. And I'll be doing a video on that in the future. Now the power delivery is nice and smooth on this model. Being a 3-cylinder, it does hit the torque curve fairly early on and holds it all the way up through the mid-range. So it's not too intimidating for the semi-experienced motorcycle rider, such as people who have ridden dirt bikes before or a second bike for somebody. The suspension is Showa 41mm upside down telescopic forks on the front with 110 millimeters of travel. They're also non-adjustable, as this is the cheaper base model. The adjustable suspension does come on the R model, which unfortunately you can't ride on a Lambs or an A2 license. The rear shock is also a Showa piggyback reservoir with only a preload adjustable, so the basic what you get on pretty much all cheaper bikes. The suspension's quite good for a non-adjustable unit. It's comfortable and good handling. Only issue I found with it, it dives a fair bit under heavy braking. Since you can't adjust it, you can't really avoid it. But for normal circumstances, they are perfectly fine. It handles incredibly stable during cornering. That's exactly what you want it for. As long as it takes the corners well, you can't really complain with it. Now another big thing is tyres, obviously. It's no good having a bike that will handle well without having good tyres. So this comes equipped from factory with Pirelli Rosso Corsas. It's got a 120 up front and a 180 at the rear. Normal size tyres for this size bike. I find these tyres incredibly grippy. Some people say that they're not that great. I've only heard a couple of people say that though, but I find them fantastic. It fills me with confidence when I'm going into a corner at a pretty decent lean angle. I don't feel like I'm going to slip at all. Whereas if you've watched a previous video on the Honda, I've slipped a few times on the Dunlops. So these tyres are incredible. I can't fault them at all. As for the brakes, they could be a little bit better, but as I said, this is the entry-level bike. You're not going to get like full Brembo brakes on this thing. It does have Nissan calipers at the front, but they are only 2-piston calipers, so you're not getting the 4-piston calipers like you do on the more expensive bikes, which is fine. They work perfectly good. I have had a couple of issues with them from brand new. The front brake has a slight vibration when under heavy braking. I'm not quite sure what that is, or if it's just my bike or it's all of them, but I'll get that looked at one day. And the rear brakes, they squeal quite a lot. I can probably fix that as well, I just haven't gotten around to it. But I'm not sure if those issues are just my bike or it's a common thing between the Street Triple S. So the front discs are actually Brembos and they're 310 millimeters. On the rear, you actually have a Brembo caliper with a 220mm disc. So it's got a decent brake on the rear, but I think it's probably Brembo's bargain basement ones, as it is a fairly cheap bike. When I say fairly cheap, cheap compared to the R and the RS. It does have ABS. It is non-switchable though, so you cannot turn it off. But for a learner bike, you don't really want to be doing that anyway, so once again, not that big a deal. Now dimensions, I'm not going to get right into it, but I will mention the weight. According to Triumph's website, it is 168 kilograms, but that's dry, so it's probably more up around the 200 kilogram mark with all the fluids in it. Seat height is 810 millimeters, so it's not that bad. I can actually flat foot this and I'm about 5'10". So it's pretty manageable if you're sort of like an average sized person. Some smaller bikes, including the Honda CB300R that I have, that actually has a higher seat height. I can't flat foot that at all. So this has a lower seat height than the smaller bike. But then again, the smaller bike is less than 150 kilos, fully wet, so it's easier to move around. So if you are a smaller rider, this might be a little bit too difficult to maneuver around at slow speeds, but as every bike, you'll get used to it. The fuel tank holds 17 litres, and according to Triumph, they say you'll get 4.5 litres per 100 kilometres, which according to my dash, I get 4.4, so it's about legit. Now, as for tech, the instrument panel is classic Daytona, so you get the LCD display on the left with all your gauges and whatnot, and on the right you get the big analog tacho with blue shift lights, which I think it's a great setup. I really enjoy it. So the instruments include obviously your odometer, only a single trip meter, so you don't get an option of A and B. You got your distance to empty on fuel, which I think is a great touch for a bike. I don't have it on my Honda. I like it lots, it helps out. Also gives you the time riding, a litres per 100 average and litres per 100 kilometres instant. Also your average speed. And it's got the normal clock, fuel gauge and temperature gauge as well. So it's nothing too fancy, but it gets the job done. It also has 2 rider modes, so you get road and rain. So the rain mode being a reduced throttle map, just to make it so you don't lose traction. Which also brings on, it does have traction control, but it is not switchable, so you cannot turn the traction control off either. But as I said, being a learner bike, you don't want to be fiddling around too much with that stuff when you're just beginning. So all in all, the tech package is basic, but it's good for the platform. So in summary, I absolutely love this bike. I would not change it for anything. I'm so glad I bought it. I couldn't find any other motorcycle that came close to it. Like obviously you've got, the only real contender to this in the learner market is the Ducati Monster, but there was a few things with that I didn't like, and it's around the same price point. For anybody who's looking for a Ducati, that's perfectly fine, but I was looking for a specific thing and I just didn't get that with the Ducati. So the Triumph won me over with that one. So for a completely new rider, I probably wouldn't recommend this as it is fairly heavy. It doesn't have a very great turning circle. It's quite punchy, like it gets up and moves. So if you've never ridden a bike before, I'd probably buy something like a 300cc. I get a secondhand 300cc, ride that for a year or two, and then upgrade to this. So that way you can learn all the basics without having to worry about dropping this, because it's quite an expensive bike for a beginner bike. I think the right-away price on this is $15,500. So it's quite expensive compared to say a 300cc, which is about $7,000. So this is twice as much. And the parts on it are very expensive as well. So even just basic maintenance, brakes are expensive, tires are expensive, as well as if you drop it, it's gonna land straight on the tank, and that's an expensive part to replace. So if you drop a 300cc, like I dropped my Honda, that cost me $100 to fix. This would have cost me a few $1,000s to fix. So do yourself a favor and don't buy one of these in your first bike unless you're coming from a motorcycling background. So if you've been riding dirt bikes your whole life, or you've done any sort of motorcycling before and you're used to how motorcycles work, then by all means, this is a fantastic first bike. I also want to point out there is a lot of Triumph factory options you can get for this bike. There's a massive list of parts, so you can customize it however you like. Obviously, this one isn't straight from the showroom. I've got the pillion seat delete, I've got the LED indicators, I've got bar end mirrors, and a few other little bits and pieces that you wouldn't even know unless you looked at the parts list and you could see that I've actually got them. Such as I've got a little oil cap there, it's a billet one. Same with the dipstick. I've got a chain guard. There's a couple of other little things that I've done that are all factory Triumph options. Yeah, there's no limit to what you can customize on this bike. And obviously I've still got a few more things to do, so make sure to subscribe, click the notification bell, because I will be doing a lot of things to this bike. So if you're interested, stick around, watch some of my other videos, If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Comment below if you're thinking about getting one of these or you want to know anything. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Anyway, that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one.